Welcome to this lesson on the business case for heat. My name is Alexandros Danilidis. The focus of this lesson is the business case for heating systems. After completing this video, you will be able to describe the key components of business models, distinguish the different activities and roles of market stakeholders, recognize important resources needed to develop a business case, and explain the use of low duration curves in designing a business case. Previously, we discussed the economic relevance and the techno-economic potential of heat systems. You learned that the technical design is connected to the economic considerations of each component. The business case considers multiple technical components together with aspects such as planning, regulation, and risks. Business cases can vary depending on the project type. For heating system projects, we identify 5 key components. The type of ownership describes if a public body, a private company, or a mix of both owns the project. The project can also be owned by a non-profit organization or a community. The owner defines the scope and objectives together with partners and stakeholders. Market stakeholders can be consumers, producers, investors, retailers, operators, and distributors. Financing can be carried out with public or private funds, or a combination of the two. The cost structure includes the type of capital and operational expenses relevant. The revenue model can be based on consumption or use fixed tariffs. Connection costs might apply for using the service. Discounts can be offered to consumers via efficiency or other temporal incentives. Market stakeholders can assume different roles. Designing, building, operating, and owning a heat system are discrete roles. Having multiple roles increases the risk but reduces the competition and could therefore lead to larger profits. Conversely, specializing in one role reduces the risk, increases the competition, and therefore lowers the profit. The choices depend on the setting and the market stakeholders involved. Preparing a business case requires knowledge and understanding of some key resources. For instance, the presence and characteristics of a heat network can define technical constraints or require additional investments. Knowing the topology of the heat network and the distance to the source is important. Waste heat sources can be important contributors to the system design. The heat demand profile describes the energy needs throughout the year and possible long-term changes. For instance, expanding the heat network could increase the heat demand. For developing heat sources and storage, and for infrastructure deployment, knowledge of the subsurface is also critical. To understand the importance of the heat demand, let's look at the primary energy use in the EU countries. The biggest energy consumption is road transport with about 28%. Households are the second largest energy consumer with 26%, closely followed by industry. Services require 14%, while other users and other types of transport account for less than 3.5%. Focusing on households, about 65% of the energy used is needed for space heating. Water heating and lighting are close with about 15% each. Cooking and other end uses account for 5 and 1.5% respectively. Space cooling is the last category, but it is projected to increase in the future. Let's look now at an example of heat demand throughout the year for a number of households connected to a district heating network. This demand cycle is representative for each year. We see a large demand during the start of the year, gradually decreasing towards the summer and reaching its lowest value at the end of July. In mid-September, the demand starts to increase, and by the end of November, it has almost peaked again. To supply the demand and start designing our business case, we deploy a geothermal source that covers about 50% of the high winter demand and 100% of the demand during the summer and early autumn. The excess heat produced by the geothermal source during summer can be stored by charging an ATES system. A small amount of energy remains unused in this example. To address this, we can either reduce the production of the geothermal source or increase the sizing of the ATES system. The ATES system is discharged during the winter time and supplies some of the demand until it is depleted. Together with the ATES system, we use a heat pump to increase the supply further. For the remaining parts, we use a peak source such as a gas boiler. 4 different sources are needed in this example to fully supply the demand. From this analysis, we can now estimate the load capacity curve, sorting the contribution of each source in descending order. The integral of each curve describes the contribution of each source to the overall energy supply. The geothermal source supplies 71%, the ATES and heat pump system 17%, and the peak source the remaining 12%. The sources are categorized based on their contribution to baseload, intermediate, and peak. Baseload sources are very important and need to have high utilization. Intermediate sources improve the baseload sources by shifting loads in time or reducing the return temperature of the baseload source. Peak sources are very flexible and typically have low investment cost per capacity unit, but high operational costs. Based on their characteristics and sizing, alternative scenarios can be considered. Summarizing our lesson, we have seen the different aspects that are considered when designing a business case, such as planning and regulation. The key component of business models are ownership, stakeholders, financing, cost structure, and revenue models. Stakeholders can assume various roles, and each role results in different risks, competition, and profit levels. Understanding existing infrastructure, available sources, heat demand, and subsurface properties are key resources for building a business case. Heat demand is used as the basis for the technical component selection and sizing. Different technical choices can be implemented for the same demand. Based on the selection of sources, a low demand curve can be generated. Thank you for your attention.